What's up, everyone, and welcome back. Today, I'm joined by Shideler Bennett. Shideler's a multi-unit franchisee with Crumbl Cookie. I'm sure a few of you out there have heard of that brand. He's also leading a SaaS software company that's providing all types of services to franchisors, franchisees. He's doing some lending. I mean, Shideler, there's a lot that you've got going on, man. So I'm excited to have you on the show and dig into some of it today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me. And hopefully throughout the podcast, it'll make a little bit more sense. Kind of sounds a little random to be involved in a few different things, but promise it makes sense on how it all works together.
Well, it does. It makes a lot of sense. There's definitely a method to the madness. But so I heard you on a buddy of mine's podcast, Drew Carpenito's Franchise Masters podcast. So Drew, shout out real quick for putting Shideler on my radar. But I heard a little bit of your story, and I was like, man, I got to reach out to this guy and just see if he would, be willing to come on my show because your story of how you've gotten to be I won't steal your thunder. I'll let you tell the audience here in a minute the number of Crumbl Cookie locations that you have. But from what I know of that, it's a really cool story. I love the fact that you're a younger guy. You kind of figured out this franchising thing a lot earlier than most people do in their career. As we've mentioned, you have some other businesses, other revenue streams as well. So I think you're doing the type of thing that a lot of people kind of dream about doing. But
Yeah.
it just seems to me like you're the type of guy that takes action, and you don't sit around and wait till you feel like you have it all figured out or have all the answers. So I think that's an important message for especially those aspiring entrepreneurs out there listening.
Yeah. Well, I think that mine can be an inspiration to people because really, I remember COVID starting or, in 2019, feeling like I was not where I wanted to be. It
Mhm.
was this feeling of like everything seemed to be working for other people, the economy seemed to be booming. And it was as things started slowing down, I kind of had this feeling where it's like, okay, people are really pushing on the brakes, trying to figure out what's going on with this COVID thing and how this is going to affect the world. And to me, it was kind of like my excuse to like step it up and to kind of catch up. And again, we're not competing against anyone, but just to the standard that I hold myself to, I
Sure.
just had expected that I would be in a different place or had achieved more. And at that point, I had been in SaaS selling.
Okay.
I had sold door to door in the past. So then I owned a farmer's insurance agency for a little bit
Oh,
while I was
really? Okay.
finishing college and sold that when I graduated. Actually, cold called someone to buy an independent book of business. And this guy was a guy that had an early Crumbl. And so
Okay.
me and my now partner who on all the crumbles, Taylor, were trying to buy his business and his building. And we're young hustlers. We're saying, man, if we can buy this, this will be such like a jump instead of starting a insurance business from scratch. And then we were trying to build an insurance brokerage that was an online version as a with the agency as the base.
Okay.
So, these grand ambitions, but when we dove into it, we started talking to this guy and he's saying, yeah, I'm opening a Crumbl for, 200-300 grand. And I'm making that same money back in the first year. And we're looking at it, we're like, why are you screwing around with insurance
Right.
when, like, what are you talking about? Like, we're wanting to buy this business from you, give you a bunch of capital, go do like 10 of these. That seems like a
Yeah,
way
why would
better
you stop
idea.
at one? So you were
Well, and way
talking to
more
him about
fun.
buying his insurance business, and just in those discussions, you started learning about what he's doing over here with Crumbl.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got
And
you.
so
Okay.
I mean, even my partner Taylor went one day and we helped him move in like a giant mixer into the space. And so, like, little by little, you got exposure to what the brand was doing. And it originated in Utah. And we didn't go to a discovery day. There was no like franchise process. It was kind of like as soon as we decided, hey, like if this guy can do it, why don't we try to do it? We went and found an investor and then started finding, an operator to move to a different state because Utah was all sold out.
Yeah,
And
because Crumbl
ultimately,
started in Utah, right?
right. So
Yeah.
that's what sold out first.
Yep.
And we had heard nothing but amazing things about California. Like every store that was opening was like doing better than the next store. And so we're like, okay, like if we can get open and if we can do California, this is a no-brainer. So by a few luck turn of events, Crumbl basically lets us do it. And, then we kind of look at each other and it's like, I guess we're doing this, right? So we decided to do a 3-store ADA right
Okay.
out the gate. Had no clue how difficult it would be to get funding for a startup concept. Like totally ignorant in every possible way. I remember looking at some of the first spaces that we went to go see with the commercial broker, and I didn't even know what to ask him. I didn't need to know that I need to know about the HVAC. I need to understand what type of amperage the space has to see if it'll even be able to handle the machines that I need to have in there. Just nothing. And fast forward, we ended up in one of the 12-month periods opening 7 stores across 3 states, and we got taken by contractors. We lost tons of money trying to get permits done. Just every possible mistake. I mean, I physically did the low voltage in our stores,
Jeez.
dug plumbing. I mean, in California, they have some pretty crazy requirements for
Oh,
our
the
grease trap.
contractor licensing stuff in California is a nightmare.
I mean, I'm not kidding. We had grease traps like that were massive. And for anyone that doesn't know what that is, cookies aren't, cooked in grease or anything like that. So this shouldn't be a major problem. They made us put this huge, huge grease trap in basically all of our units, and we had to dig the holes for that. And it just one thing after another. So we ultimately get 9 locations open across those 3 states. And it's kind of like as soon as we were like getting ready to open that 9th store, the sales just started declining. And again, I was turning 30, and again, I had felt this positive momentum like, hey, I'm doing it. I'm all in on something.
Yeah.
I am not, networking. I'm not considering other opportunities. I am all in. And this is probably one of the first times where I really felt like there's no turning back. And the other thing people don't tell you is they don't tell you you're not only signing up for the debt, but you're signing these leases and now
Lease.
have millions of dollars of lease liability on top of it. So
Yep.
when you look at like, what does this look like if I have to shut it down? I'm not just like wasted my time. I'm in the hole,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, you're
So,
in the whole potentially big time, right? I mean, especially
right.
in your case, spread it across 9 locations, 9 leases. We'll get right back to the episode in just a minute, but if you've been considering business ownership, if you're already a business owner looking to expand and you're curious about franchising, I'd love to connect with you, answer any initial questions that you have, talk about a specific franchise, and detail the exact process that I use and have taken hundreds of people through to help them understand franchise ownership, find the right franchise for them, and conduct the necessary due diligence. Click the link in the show notes if you'd like to schedule a free, no obligation strategy call. I look forward to talking with you. And now back to the episode. All right, so walk me through, because there's a lot I want to kind of unpack here, right? So you mentioned, so what year did you first start talking to Crumbl and sign that original? I think you said it was a 3 license ADA agreement
Yep.
for
Signed that
California.
first one in, I think it was December of 2020.
Okay.
And then we opened 1 store in Tennessee in 2021. And then we opened 7 stores in 2022. And then the last store that we opened was later in 2023 when we were just trying to like round out, the sales were kind of in an interesting spot. I don't know if people remember, but the market was just scared.
Yeah.
No one knew what was happening.
Yep.
It felt like, are we all just going to collapse after COVID and things are going to just never be the same?
Yep.
But, it felt totally different. People definitely were just saving their money. I talked with so many people about just businesses that were slow in general across every sector.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, dessert got hit by that.
Yeah. I mean, in our businesses, like 2020 21 was a phenomenal year, like
Yeah.
record years, for all of our businesses. 22 was still pretty good. Things started to level out and definitely slow down a little bit in 2023, especially for our Shelf Genie business, which is more of like a high end home improvement,
Right.
like definitely not a need to have type of thing. So you mentioned an investor earlier, right? Because that's always one of the biggest questions, as I'm talking to people about the possibility of starting their own business or investing in a franchise. They don't
Yep.
know how they're going to get the funding or if they're even in a financial situation. So, how did you guys go about getting to a point where you could sign a 3 license deal with Crumbl?
That's a great question. We had lots of friends and family that had heard of the brand. That was
Okay.
the benefit that we
Yeah.
had. Like Crumbl in Utah was the thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
It was really popular. The social media is going viral all the time. And so as we shared that we were getting approved, investors were reaching out to us, friends and family now saying, hey, how can I get involved? And once they saw us doing, that first ADA, others came and said like, well, how do we do it? And we're like, well, like, let's see how we can make this work. And
Yeah.
ultimately just got really creative. And what I tell franchisees now is I'm so glad I gave up equity because if I would have tried to do this all with debt, when the music felt like it was about to stop,
Hmm.
my equity partners who put in a bunch of money were able to be flexible on repayment and
Yeah.
what was going on,
Yep.
where if I would have been stuck with debt service on
Yeah, the
everything.
bank would have just had you by the balls. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, look, I love that story, right? My wife and I got into our first franchise in our late 20s by going to a mentor of mine. And we're not even talking something as high of an initial investment as like Crumbl because it's not brick and mortar.
Right.
But it was probably 200K all in was what we needed, including a nice chunk of working capital. But went to a mentor of mine that had some experience in franchising, and he put up the bulk of that initial capital, and he still owns a small percentage of that company today. It's been a hell of an investment for him. But it's been
Yeah.
awesome for us too. And it's what kind of catapulted us. There were some things with the franchise where, if we would have like tried to go the SBA route, just from we were probably on the fence whether or not, they would have approved us to begin with. But then from a timing standpoint, like there was a franchisee in the neighboring market. As soon as he found out someone else was kind of sniffing around that territory, he said he
Yeah.
wanted to write a check for it and buy it. And thankfully the franchisor was like, dude, you've had 8 years where you could have bought this market if you wanted it. Like, we're going to give these young kids a shot and see if they can come up with the money. So I tell people this. I'm like, this is a very viable, like, it sounds crazy, I think, to some people to say, well, you don't have to like do this through a bank.
Yeah.
You can go find an investor. It could be friends and family. That could be, like in our case, a mentor, someone that,
Yeah.
really looked at it as like a good business opportunity for him.
Right.
There's other just private lenders out there that are looking, for ways they can get into franchising, but have it be a little bit more passive. So you get creative with it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that the other part is it reduces your risk, right? Like in franchising, if that first one doesn't work, it can put you in a pretty tough spot.
Yeah.
And if it does, the worst case scenario is you have to buy that partner out. And guess what? They took some risk with you. So that's a great reward for them. And
Yeah.
then you can say, hey, let's, go do a bunch more in a different place. So people hate the idea of giving up equity. And in a lot of ways, I'm like, you only make money in this if you scale. And
Well,
so,
that's the key, right?
yeah,
What's worth more, 100% of $1 million business, or
right.
50% of a $20 million enterprise? So let me ask you this: do you think you guys could have scaled and ramped this thing up as quickly as you did, going more of a traditional lending route without all of these private investors?
No,
Yeah.
there's a 0% chance. I mean, the banks had such a hard time getting comfortable, even from an SBA perspective, that like
Yeah. Usually they
just no
want to
way.
see that you have, if you're doing multiple, if you have for those listening, ADA is area development agreement, right? So it's
Oh
just
yeah.
you're coming in, you're committing to, in your case, you started with three locations of a Crumbl Cookie in California. And so then typically you're on a development schedule, right? Where you and the franchisor agree, like, hey, we're going to get our first location open. And then you agree on a timeline of which you're going to try to have your second location open, and so forth and so forth. And usually the bank wants to see that your first location is open and
Yep.
positively cash flowing before they're going to start working with you on the funds to go find your second location. So like when I first heard you guys open 7 locations in a year or whatever it was, that was my
Yep.
first question. Was like, well, how the hell did they pull it off from a funding standpoint? But it
Yep.
makes sense that you have all these private investors with you. Now from a bandwidth standpoint, it's still very impressive that you guys were able to run that fast. So tell us a little bit, like what did those getting those first locations open, what did that look like? Because I know you mentioned like looking at real estate, you didn't even really comprehend all the different things you needed to know about. I imagine some of that's because Crumbl was so new too, right? Like they probably didn't have
Yeah.
support in place yet the way they probably do today, or that a lot of more established brands do, where they've got real estate teams and people that can come in and help a franchisee with a lot of that. But what did those first locations, what did it look like to get them open?
So exactly what you're saying. We grew with Crumbl,
Yeah.
and they were doing their very best. And looking back now, and now having the opportunity to speak with franchisors and franchisees on a daily basis, I find out how well Crumbl did despite the insane growth. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
we're talking, there's 1,000 units that are open in 6 years. I mean, I don't know how many groups do that, because that's the other part to
Not
Crumbl's
many.
credit. They were just like, hey, you're opening a store every 6 months. Like that's the expectation. And we really are trying to hold you to that. And we felt it. I mean, we were doing everything to make that happen. But, how do you even hire to support that many franchisees? So we're talking with, this onboarding guy that's never done a business. He's a college student. He's just trying to like even understand where I'm at.
He's
And
there for
I don't
the free
know.
cookies.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, we really leaned on other franchisees that were experienced multi-unit operators of other brands that were huge helps to us in that. But yeah, I mean, it was making mistakes all across it. And, we had operators in each market that were supposed to be, tracking the progress of things. But ultimately, like for California, um, that was not done well, and I had to go move there. And just like that's the other part that I always caution people is it's a great idea to feel like, oh yeah, Scheidler's so smart. He got an operator, he got the money partner, and he's gonna just kind of make everything go. And honestly, I was like, this is the best gig ever. I am going to get these businesses open, not gonna have to move, not even gonna have to travel that much. These operators are just gonna be perfect, because that you just have these expectations. The thing you find is you can only keep people accountable as well as you understand the business or the expectations. And when I don't know what I don't know, it's a recipe for disaster, and
Yeah.
that's
Well,
what
I mean,
ultimately we
whether you're
experienced.
dealing with contractors, right, trying to take you for a ride. I mean, you're out of state.
Yep.
You're not a contractor yourself. You also don't fully understand the laws and requirements. And California is one of, if not the toughest states when it comes to permitting and licensing and things like that. Yeah, so safe to say there were some bumps in the road and a little bit of a learning curve. So you moved to California, although that wasn't part of the original plan. I think, and this is what, still 2020, maybe early 2021.
This was so we had really spent all of 21 finding the leases and getting to
Yeah.
a
Okay.
place where coming into 2022, we were told that yeah, this first location that you have going, it's 80% done and that, plan on opening first quarter of the year. And I, I'm in January 1 of 2022, sitting there talking with my partners, and we're looking at a video of what they sent of, the state of the store. And it was nowhere near that. And again, we're not contractors, but it was like, this is a train wreck. This is it. So I looked at, me and my wife, and asked my parents to watch our daughter. And we said, we're driving down right now. And I got there, and I just was just distraught. It was like, I can't believe I am going to lose friends and family's money. I like making money at that point. I could care less. I was like, I have to just get these people their money back. And it made me find out really quick, I do not care about money. I care about relationships. And if this was going to hurt
Yeah.
all of the relationships of these people that trusted me, I would say I will just walk away right now and, like, make sure everyone is whole. But I couldn't.
Yeah.
Now we're
Yeah.
so
You have
far
to kind of
in.
see it through at that point. That's the only pathway to making sure they
Yeah.
don't actually lose the money that they invested with you. When I think I heard you say, I mean, sounds like you had one kid at the time, you had another kid on the way while all this was
Yep.
going on.
Yep.
Um, for those listening, guys, this is like, I hear so often, well, maybe in a few years when the timing's going to be better. It's like, there's always going to be a million reasons why
Yep.
the timing's not perfect to make some moves. Like, Shideler, you guys were making moves, right? And it didn't go perfectly. It almost
Right.
never does, right? But that's how you learn. And so fast forward us to today, because how many crumbles do you have open today as
Yeah.
we sit here?
So we have 10. We bought one end of December, and now I've got 4 more under contract right now to buy in 2 separate markets. One of those will be financed, and another is seller financed. And so, to catch it up, to put the pieces together, when the sales dropped, I started brokering debt because I realized how miserable my experience was of trying to get my businesses funded. And because we just said we might have to be putting money into these businesses each month just to keep
Hmm.
them alive,
Yeah.
right? Which is not what you want to do. But then in 2024, everything turned around. The brokering business was doing really well. The Crumbl sales picked right back up, and we'd really leaned out our team and put a lot of things in place. Started the beginnings of our management company that we're still cultivating, but really professionalizing our organization and enabling us to grow. And the whole time we were building these out, we were A/B testing products and services to help us scale, because right out the gate, we were working with 3 separate states, right? So like you're saying, how do you even have the bandwidth to do that? Well, the reality is we tried 3 or 4 different accounting, bookkeeping, payroll services. We tried a bunch of different communication, softwares, task management softwares. And ultimately that was the beginnings of Cover Panda, because we were solving our own problem for multi-unit franchisees, and then looked back and realized, well, this actually would be super valuable information for franchisors to help their
Yeah.
franchisees. And if we can set everything up correctly for the franchisors and the franchisees can get really clean data of
Yep.
what's going on in their business, the status of that business and the build out. And that's how that was born. And so just this past week, we got our first level of funding that came in, 500,000, and been
Congrats.
just bootstrapping it. So, it's really fun.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? And another, I think, really good example of where you just started making moves on the Crumbl
Yeah.
thing, right? You saw a good opportunity. It's not like you went into it like blind or without a plan or anything, but you moved quick, right? And
Yeah.
then when things didn't start going exactly the way you'd planned, you just kept rolling with it, right? And you problem
Right.
solved and you thought outside of the box and came up with creative solutions. And I think it should absolutely be noted here. You hustled your ass off, right? You
Yeah.
picked up and moved to California, right? I think a lot of people, and this is where maybe like having friends and families, money involved, you being younger in your career with a young family and stuff, like you
Yep.
didn't have the luxury of being like, oh, well, would have been cool if this worked out, but can't win them all. Like that lit a fire and you went to work yourself. I mean, you rolled your sleeves up, literally, got
Literally.
in these locations, helped get them built out, helped get them open. And so everything you learned in doing that, everything that you learned about the debt, right? Now you have
Right.
a business where you're brokering debt, right? Trying to, get all of these locations open across three states and, streamline operations and create SOPs and all that. You
Yep.
learned a ton. Now you're in a position with Cover Panda, your SaaS business, where you're bringing these same types of solutions that you essentially custom built for yourself in your
Right.
business to other franchisees and franchisors that have a need. So I think, there's so much value to just taking action and learning as you go. And not only is it going to help you reach your original vision sooner, there's no
Right.
telling what other doors might open, right?
Yeah.
Because of the action that you're taking.
Well, it's a really powerful thing when I'm talking to a franchisor and I can tell them that my management company is running on the software that we're using, and we almost did 12 million in sales across our portfolio, which is more than a majority of the franchisors that we're working with. So we're saying, like, if it works for us, I'm very confident that this will be a great thing
Yeah,
for you
yeah,
and your franchisees. It's just like, in every way, the money is where the mouth is on this, and it feels very like holistic. And now on the brokering of debt as well, I only want to do it for people that it makes sense, because
right.
I make money on my actual businesses.
Yeah, you don't
And
need that
now,
to pay the bills anymore.
yeah,
Yeah,
so I can be, a lot more, specific on the client that I want to work with, which is typically just a larger check size. I want to do it for multiple millions of dollars. I really can't spend the time anymore, at least on the broker business, for these small deals. um you know Cover Panda does all the startup stuff that people could need. So it's just a much better position to be in.
yeah. Yeah, well, congrats, man. It's a really cool story. Everyone, we'll get right back to the episode, but I wanted to quickly share a free resource with you. If you're curious about franchise ownership and want to learn more about how countless people, including myself, have leveraged franchising as a way to create more freedom for themselves and to take control of their livelihood, I've put together an ebook. It's called Franchise Wealth Creation, and it's the perfect starting point for anyone that's just curious to learn more about this whole franchise thing and how I've helped hundreds of other people navigate all the steps involved in understanding and researching franchising. So click the link in the show notes, fill out a short form. I'll send you the ebook. I think it's a great starting point if you're curious at all about learning more about franchising. All right, let's get back to the episode. And I want to talk more about Cover Panda. Before we do that though, so like, talk to me a little bit, because you alluded to this earlier. Some people that are listening are probably familiar with Crumbl, but there was definitely this kind of roller coaster there for a bit, where Crumbl was the hottest franchise around, right? It was just a rocket ship. They were selling them. To your point earlier, they were actually getting them open, which is always good to see.
Yep.
A lot of brands can sell. It's the opening that sometimes they struggle with. But then you start hearing some buzz, like, in my circles where I listen to people that talk about franchises a lot, you start, hearing these questions, is Crumbl the real deal, or is this just kind of a fad? Is the, kind of cookie phase gonna, is something else going to come and replace it? And you guys did have kind of a dip in sales there for a period of time. Tell me a little bit about, like, because it sounded like that dip in sales, and this is system wide across
Yeah.
Crumbl, that dip in sales kind of, lined up with you guys finally getting to a place where you had these locations open. You probably kind of felt like you were out of the woods a little bit, and then all of a sudden revenue starts to decline. So like, where was your mindset at? And, how did you keep moving forward with confidence as after it's just like one setback after another, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, Wes, the reality is that there was no confidence for a period of time, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I tell people I would wake up at night, and if my kid woke me up or something like that, there was very often that I would spiral, going through what the worst case scenario is. What
Yeah.
did I do to my family, to my friends that trusted me? Like, my wife has been an amazing support through all of this and working to keep us, I wasn't able to pull an income from these stores for a really good portion of while we were doing it.
Yeah.
And so the confidence was gone. I mean, again, at a certain point, I would have given them away, like say, please just wipe out the debt and let me
Yeah.
walk away because
Yeah.
I don't want this baggage. And, you know, that's the part that I think people really need to understand. I did not have confidence the whole time. It did help talking with everyone else in QSR and even in, desserts, that everyone was hurting. Lots of stores were closing. And it was kind of like, I really believe that Crumbl, they're way better at marketing than 99% of other,
Yeah.
even food brands.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
then their technology has, we've felt the growing pains of that, but now has an insanely impressive set of, technology suites, both for us franchisees and customer facing. And so it's like, and the product is really good. Like, this is not just your run of a mill chocolate chip cookies that like
Oh, it's
got popular
arguably
for a
too
little bit.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. I
If
mean,
you're worried about your waistline, it's arguably too good.
so I mean, all of that to say, the fundamentals of the business did not change. There was a question of identity of like, how can we make the sales come back? And really, I think it was a more of a global, I mean, macro
The economy. Yeah.
economy than
Yeah.
anything, that it was the brand specific. So to answer your question of where's the brand now, and the people that were in my comments saying, oh, it's a fad and you're going to basically lose it all. I'm like, between me and you, Wes, I hope people don't look at Crumbl. I hope that they leave them all for me, and we'll see how it turns out in the next 5 to 10 years. We definitely feel very confident with the brand. The leadership has proven over and over again that they're willing to look at data and make decisions based on that, and that's as much as I could ask for from the leadership. And I mean, you can tell that they genuinely care about the brand, even at this scale. I mean, those guys are making so much money, like they don't need more money,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
they're making millions and millions of dollars a year, just running this thing and having a blast doing it. Could they sell? For sure, but um, we'll see what happens. But I'm definitely optimistic.
Well, I think that's, look, if you're a franchisee, you're gonna have problems, challenges. I mean, not even just franchisee. If you're a business owner, right? It comes with the territory. It's
Exactly.
why most people, settle for the job, even if they have dreams of owning their own business. Right.
Right.
But in the context of a franchise, if you feel like your franchisor does genuinely care, if you feel like they listen, right, and if they're willing to look at the data, take the feedback from franchisees and actually implement changes. It's never going to be perfect. And you will never find a franchisee that, if they're being totally honest with you, is going to be like, yeah, you know what? My franchisor is perfect. There's nothing that they could be doing better or nothing that I wish they would do differently. But if you can have those things that you just mentioned, that's a healthy
Yeah.
franchisor-franchisee relationship. And that's when franchising really works. What advice would you give? Like, did you find anything, these nights when you're waking up and your mind just kind of starts going to worst case scenarios? Because our minds have a tendency of, um,
Yeah.
exaggerating what the worst case scenarios can be, or exaggerating the likelihood of the worst case scenario. Like, did you find anything tactical to, kind of help bring yourself back to reality and say, look, some of this is avoidable. These are the action items that we need to take. Like, I don't know. how did you get through that? Because that's a very tough time. We've been in similar situations ourselves, especially if you have a young family. I mean, it's terrifying, right?
Yeah.
Um, how'd you get through it?
You know, having to actually go through the exercise of understanding what the worst case scenario looks like, where, okay, there's a good chance that, like let's say the bottom third of these stores have to be closed down. How much debt does that leave me with? What does the lease liability look like that I have to cover? And, I mean, the very real scenario was that I didn't think all of them were just going to fail, but if I had to close some of them so that the other stores would pick up those sales and, would move along, my worst case scenario was really I'm going to have to run these businesses for 5 to 10 years, basically making nothing just so that I could pay them off and close them up. And even if it was worse than that, and I had to walk away and take a let's call it $1 million loss, I was like, you know what? If that's that, kind of settling with like, okay, if I'm at $1 million in the hole, what does that look like? And honestly, had to come up with, well, maybe my friend or family could buy my house so that we wouldn't get kicked out, and then maybe I could buy it back from them once I got things figured out. Like that, those
Yeah,
were the real things of like, if it goes this bad,
yeah,
I gotta have at least now my mind doesn't think about that anymore. And then in the start of 2023, I did hire a life coach, Mitch Whiting, giving a little shout out here, but it was all about just wiring my brain to look at things that it's not happening to me, it's happening and I get to choose how
yeah,
I perceive it, right?
yeah,
And that whole slight change to say like nothing is bad that's happening to me. That's just the feeling that I associate with
yeah,
an experience.
yeah,
And doing that was a very good thing to just get into the mindset of that doesn't affect who Shideler Bennett is. This potential failure, if it does fail, does not mean I'm a failure, and disassociating those two things. And so it also helped a ton when things have totally bounced back and it's now given me the life that I dreamed of. And so, to kind of recap the story, is going from 2019 feeling super far behind to now today 2025, I am loving my life. My franchises more than pay for what I need to be financially free. I get to work on a startup and not stress about money, which is always a horrible thing.
yeah.
And then we're professionalizing our organization and growing stores and get to talk with people about huge transactions on the debt side. And that's a dream job for me, just to talk with business owners and problem solve through things. So in that very short period, a 5 year period, people always say you underestimate what you can do
Totally.
in that amount of time. It's like, if things can continue, I'll hit all of my financial goals in, just by taking massive action in just a couple of years. And again, I've really learned that money means nothing to me as well. Like, I've now seen what it's like to have nothing. And it really is like, okay, if I have my family and we can be happy, and
Yeah,
I don't want to have to lose my house. That one would have been
sure.
rough, but
Of course,
you know
but yeah,
yeah,
man, that's such a good thing to be able to learn about yourself, and I love your point of just, I mean, dude, 5 years. Look at what you've built, but also look at the swings that you've been through in that period, right? It's
yeah,
not like it was just this steady climb to the top. It's, I mean, if you break it down, sounds like you've had more over the last 5 years. You had more years where you were uncertain whether or not it was going to work out than you have, but all the success that you've
majority
had has
for
come
sure.
at the tail end of that, and you're still building. So yeah, man, I want people to take that away. It's like you don't need, you know 10, 15, 20 years to go out and build something, like you've done. It won't
Right.
happen overnight, right? It's not going to be overnight success. But again, if you're willing to take action, if you're willing to take calculated risk and learn as you go, um, big things can happen, and it doesn't take as long as I think, most of the time we kind of assume that it will.
Yeah.
So you've got 10 locations, 4 under contract. So it sounds like now you guys are kind of pivoting a little bit to, hey, instead of just continuing to open new locations, we can grow by acquiring existing locations. I think you said somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 million a year in revenue through your Crumbl portfolio. How many employees do you have across your Crumbl franchises?
A lot of them are part-time, and
Yeah,
so we
true.
have about, 500 employees.
Yeah, yeah, and then I assume layers of management. I know you said you have an operating company or a management company. Um,
That's what we're just learning about. And so I'm trying to share with people, like, we did this as mom and pop as you could in the beginning, not knowing anything, and
yeah,
are slowly professionalizing it. So my team looks entirely different now. We basically have someone that is over kind of the COO type role, and then there's area managers, there's store level managers, and we've got inventory specialists that helps manage it across the full thing. We've got virtual assistants that are in on it. We're obviously leveraging a bunch of software that way, and just are hiring a CFO right now to come in and help us keep the COO accountable. And now it's just a blast. Like, yeah, we're acquiring because most of the country is already built out for Crumbl. So
right.
trying to round out our markets, really put us to a place where we've got, call it 5 to 10 locations in each market, so that the leadership hits some economies of scale.
Let's go. Yeah,
And this is as fun as it's ever been,
I
and
bet.
there's
Yeah,
always ways to improve still.
yeah. And I imagine you see yourself continuing to try to grow your Crumbl portfolio as opportunities arise.
Yeah, the goal right now is get to 20 within 3 years, and we'll decide what we want to do at that point, and along the way helping that grow the software business, and hopefully connect with other talented people. And if there's hairy debt deals that people want help figuring out how to structure things, I just love doing it. Like, that is a blast.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So give us kind of the quick overview. Cover Panda, it's come up a few times. Your SaaS company. So how are you guys helping franchisors and franchisees with Cover Panda?
Yeah. So I am not the brains of the operation. It's very not my level of expertise. Taylor Byington is my partner on all of the Crumbles, and then the CEO and founder of Cover Panda. And then he brought in Caden Thompson, who is the CTO from Pluralsight, who was a publicly traded company. He was over iOS for their learning management system, and so
Yeah.
really bringing in just an awesome team. And we've got a CPA that's been with us now for years, that was with a big four accounting firm, and have put all of those pieces together. So we help franchisees go from wanting to start a business to incorporating, setting up their bank account, transaction management, payroll, bookkeeping, all of the things you need to do a business, insurance, and make that a very streamlined process. And for the franchisor, that gives them so many benefits because they know things are set up correctly.
Yeah.
We actually give them a ton of buying momentum from that person, because now they are doing these tasks in an efficient way while they're getting prepared to get onboarded with the brand. And then it gives the franchisor a view to manage all of their units. And we can also do their royalty management and their learning management system.
Yeah.
So it's just, there's a lot to be built, and there's different versions of that we're working on, but it's working, and there's plenty of demand in the space. So that's why
That's
we
for
had to
sure.
go get a little bit of money to expedite the build out process.
Yeah, that's exciting, man. Definitely a need for it because most franchisors kind of build out their own onboarding process, and for some
Yeah.
it's going to be pretty tight and fully baked. For others, it's going to be very just kind of by the seat of the pants type thing. So you guys are coming in and streamlining that, and then also some other tools. It sounds like that the franchisors are able to use. Yeah, man, it would be cool to see where that goes, and also like what other directions you guys can take that in, right? I imagine
Right.
you'll only continue to uncover other areas that you're able to help both franchisees and franchisors from a software standpoint. So, dude,
Anyone that's managing multiple units is starting to be like, wait, you guys are building this for, franchisors and multi-unit, franchisees, but can I use this for my consulting business that, manages multiple things? And we're like, no, we're staying really narrow, but you're right. Like
I was going to ask
everything is
if you were
applicable.
thinking of branching out of that, but
We're
um,
staying hyper focused, but I mean, in the dental industry, right? These large DSOs, they don't
uh-huh,
have something like that. I mean, like,
yeah,
there's a lot of interest around this. We've had offers from venture capital groups that have, done 500 to $2 million in term sheets. And right now we're not looking to do that and just trying to stay hyper focused on providing amazing products and services for franchisors and franchisees.
well, I think that's smart. I think a lot of would be successful companies messed up because they tried to go too broad or too wide too early. But
Yeah,
man, hell of a story, dude. Very inspiring. I think there's so much that the listeners can take away. I mean, personally, man, you've inspired me with your story, but you know
I appreciate
have
it.
a
Thanks for the time.
dream, have a goal, have
Yeah,
a vision, go take some action. Don't sit around and think that you got to wait till you have it all figured out, wait till the timing is perfect. And
yeah,
it's probably going to be hard, right? But anything in life worth doing is going to be hard and going to have some
right.
challenges, and stay true to that vision and surround yourself with good people, and good things will happen.
That you couldn't set it better.
Where can people connect with you, hear more from you if they want to check out Cover Panda? They want to see where your Crumbl locations are. Where should we point people?
LinkedIn is great. I've been trying to be active on there for the last, 3 or 4 years, and that's probably the easiest place to find me, to find the link to Cover Panda. It's coverpanda.co. Initiator is the boutique debt business. So if you got a big, hairy, multi-million dollar deal, that's something that we can help with there. But anything I can do to help, I think these podcasts are amazing. I think I just want people to be encouraged to say, like, you can go from your tech job right now that you don't love or whatever
Yeah,
you're doing to multi-unit ownership that then is the catapult for you to be able to do other things that you want to try
yeah,
in a very short amount of time.
yeah.
And franchising is an amazing way to do that because it can give you training wheels to do any other business, right? Like,
Totally.
yeah,
I tell people that all the time, man. The first business you buy or start doesn't have to be the only business you do or the last business you do. There's nothing wrong with having a stepping stone, right? If it's getting you a
right.
little bit closer to that goal that you have, that's progress. And I think a franchise can give you the ability to run a lot faster. You're a guy that's very capable of going out and building something from scratch and being successful with it. But I'll go out on a limb and say you probably wouldn't have 10 of them, doing 12 million a year in a 3-year period, had you gone that route. But who knows?
Right.
So anyways, man, I think that's a beautiful message. And I hope a lot of the listeners out there take it to heart. But appreciate you, and thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Wes. Appreciate you.
You got it.